Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Marketing in Practice podcast, the podcast where I get to simplify the marketing and the mindset so you, the chiropractor, can increase your income, your impact, and your enjoyment in practice too. Let me start with a really big and bold statement. It's this: today's guest has the highest patient retention of any chiropractor I've ever spoken to. In more than 25 years that I've been involved in chiropractic, his name is Vismai Schonfelder. He's been referred to as the Tim Ferriss of chiropractic because of his clarity of thought, his ability to think outside of the box. Vismai and I studied at the same time. He started the year ahead of me, ended up finishing the year below me, and I tell him a story that I actually didn't even think that he would graduate. His head seemed somewhere else at the time that we were studying together. But not only did he go on and graduate, he's had one of the most stunning, successful, and fascinating careers in chiropractic of anyone I've spoken to. In fact, he's still very much inside of chiropractic. In today's episode, we talk about the vortex system that Vismai uses to get these mind-blowing retention rates. He shares many of the steps that go into this 6-month process. If you're wanting to improve your retention, and who doesn't, because it's a wonderful way to run a very enjoyable practice, is to have the same patients coming back and seeing us again and again and again instead of having to constantly fill that bucket, then you're going to love this episode. Let's go chat with Vismai. Enjoy the show. Vismai, welcome to the Marketing Your Practice podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm well down in Tasmania, enjoying the Australian nature with the fam. It's great, actually.
Now, you mentioned beforehand you're down there catching up with. Did you work down in Tasmania originally after you graduated?
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why we're back here. I was fortunate. I was one of the graduates, was fortunate enough to get nourished and nurtured by a real master of chiropractic, and that's Ken Parker and his wife, Karen.
Yes.
Karen was a bit less active in the relationship because she was just had a baby, but I was working alongside Ken in their practice in Launceston, and he just really showed me the way. He really took my hand and really introduced me to the profession in such a gentle way. Oh my gosh, I was so fortunate to have Ken and Karen by my side.
What was it that Ken and Karen taught you or nurtured in you?
Very much the consistent rhythm of a high retention chiropractic office, and the space to come from when you want to have clients for life. Ken, I mean, it was very intimidating in one way, but also very relieving in another way to have him, because the office was split in two, really, separated by a hall in the middle, and Ken had his 2 rooms on the right side and my 2 rooms were on the left, and everyone would come wafting out of Ken's rooms, all getting better and thanking him and making their appointments for 6 months in advance. And on my side, no one seemed to get better and everyone had questions, and it was a bit of pushback, but Ken always just encouraged me. He just always was very sweet how he grew my confidence in that first 1.5 years. So I think that was the biggest thing. He gave me what I call chiropractic confidence, chiropractic certainty, and introduced me to the idea of taking care of people forever. That was something foreign to me coming out of school.
Beautiful concept. I had an awareness, probably after about 5 years in practice, I changed the way that I looked at my patients, and on their initial consultation, I just had the headspace that this was going to be, or I was going to be their chiropractor for life. They might be active sometimes, they might be inactive at different times, but I'm choosing now that that's the role I'm going to play. And that ability to kind of go through those different phases. I know there are different phases in my life where I'm very regimented with my exercise and my eating, and sometimes I drop off. But to be there with it too. So I want to have a chat. We can talk about retention today. You've written a book on retention, which we will talk about. I wonder if we could start with this. What do you think the biggest barrier is, or maybe there's several of them, that gets in the way of chiropractors having the retention that they dream of?
The biggest thing, I can say it in one word: rhythm. It's to have a high retention chiropractic office, you need a very disciplined rhythm for people to go through, actually. One of the biggest questions that clients will ask to keep retention going is, what's next? They want to know what's next, and they might not say it in so many words, but if you've got nothing apart from the chiropractic adjustment, which, don't get me wrong, that's our craft, that's our art, that's the central piece in this whole story, but it's just not enough to keep people into what I call the habit zone.
Yes.
Habits need to be something like they need to be doing things like 10, 15, sometimes 20 times a day, let alone
Yes.
3 times a week that we have at the start. So I see that as the biggest um, blockage for people slipping into this whole idea of chiropractic care for life right from the get-go. So rhythm, the major religions of the world, they can't get millions of people doing what they do each year, whether you talk about the Muslims and Ramadan, whether you talk about the Catholics and Christmas and Easter. I think there's a lot to extrapolate for our little chiropractic offices when we study the rhythms that the major religions of the world have actually set up. And I've just pushed those rhythms into our own office, and we just created this 6-month rinse and repeat. We call it the vortex, the chiropractic retention vortex. We just create that rinse and repeat cycle so that every 6 months, the same things happen in the office all the time.
I remember chatting with a good friend of ours, Martin Harvey, and he was sharing some of your concepts with me in around this idea that you kind of touched on then, that like habit formation requires repetition, that 3 times a week is not even close about, and that you had the idea that I need my patients thinking about me all the time. And I think it's one of your first 4 vortexes. Is that what you would call them? 4 triggers. Can you share those with our listeners, because it'll help to kind of lay the foundations in terms of sort of things that might help people get into the rhythm and have people thinking about us so that we remain front of mind?
Yeah, so with the first 4 vortex elements, there's a couple of things that need to happen. First, they need to be free. So this isn't a time to upsell them some sort of product. They need to be readily available. So people can't really change you can't expect new clients to fly off to the moon for 3 weeks while we do this idealistic chiropractic bubble.
Yes.
They need to be very logical, so that when I instruct these first 4 elements, the client needs to leave my office that day thinking what Vismai is asking of me makes sense. It's logical for what I'm here for. I can see the reason behind it. So this isn't a time immediately to jump on the chiropractic philosophy bandwagon. So what I first wanted to do is get them doing things. So the first 4 things, I simply ask people when they're standing if they can distribute their weight evenly on 2 legs. I say, listen, the chiropractic adjustment's amazing, but we need your help. I need your help. So the second thing is when they're sitting, that they just distribute their upper body weight through 2 sitting bones, so that they're not all twisted up with one leg crossed over and then texting with the upper body rotated the other way, so that we've got this kind of torsion thing through the spine. The third thing is having 1 liter of water for every 35 kilos that they weigh. And the fourth thing is to have a brisk 10-minute walk immediately following every chiropractic adjustment. And those 4 things make up what we call the immediate post-adjustment rhythm. So I even use that word. I say to the clients, listen, there's a rhythm. And the other thing with this, it preempts one of the most common questions that us chiropractors need to know how to navigate. And that is, yeah, but what can I do in this relationship? How can I? So, I say, listen, it's not about me. It's a working together. If you don't do these 4 things, you can come to me 10 times a day and we're not going to win. If you can do these 4 things, there's a big chance that the chiropractic adjustments will hold.
And so the intent behind those things, I would imagine, is to expand the adjustment in terms of, I guess, the whole arc in around it. But also it's one of those things that triggers, you talk about, that patients will often say to you, I think of you every time I'm standing in the line at the supermarket, or every time I have a glass of water now. Is the intent behind it just to kind of keep you front of mind more?
That's more like a secondary thing, but I want to be really clear. This vortex concept, it's very patient centric. It has the care of the client is at the heart of it. So of course it's a marketing, let's call it a marketing tactic for want of a better word, and it's a marketing rhythm, but it's not a savvy, clever trickery. This is really taking care of people. You can't argue with any of these 23 vortex elements that we have. They're all about taking care of the client, but they just so happen at the same time to be very clever in the sense that you occupy space in people's homes in the form of a quarterly newsletter. You occupy space in people's homes in the form of a really well-designed welcome booklet. But you occupy space in people's minds just by getting them to do certain things many times a day. And that's way more than when they're just coming in for their adjustments.
Yeah. I like Seth Godin's idea on this. And he says the best marketing is actually solving people's problems. I mean, it's all of those things, and not to show it, because for some reason there has been this idea that marketing is self-centered. Like when I'm actually marketing, it's about me trying to grow my business. And yes, it can be, but my life changed as an 18-year-old when somebody handed me a Zig Ziglar tape. And I heard Zig Ziglar say, you'll get everything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want. And that became my obsession. It became my very best marketing of like, how can I help? How can I help people get a result? And that's what I see with what you're saying there as well. Or back to Stephen Covey's, it's a win-win.
It's very much a win-win.
That idea of you're going to be, because I contend that let's say that we're doing a reasonable job to begin with our chiropractic care. The vast majority of the reasons that people stop care is they just get distracted. Like it's not that you're terrible. It's not they didn't like coming to see you. It's not that the results weren't great. Is they get busy and distracted. I know it with my life now. Andy, who I go and see, I mean, my wife is a chiropractor, but I go and see Andy each week for an adjustment. He hurt his shoulder, so couldn't practice for 6 weeks, but he's been back for nearly 4 weeks now. And I haven't got back in. Like I've got to just get back into that thing again there too. I love it.
And that's you being a chiropractor who loves chiropractic, who talks about chiropractic. So that's you. So spare a thought for our lovely clients. So one of the hallmarks of a high retention office is no wastage. So we've got systems built into our rhythms that sweep up people like you who have dropped out of care.
Yes.
And I call them my attention to retention strategies.
Yes.
So, for example, with all our quarterly newsletters, we do a print version. We give that to the active clients coming in. But anyone that's not on that active list, they're our inactive clients. We simply email it to them. And we get so many reactivations from that every quarter. And like you said, it's not because people don't want to come. It's just life is busy. Attention is the gold commodity of today, So, that's one of the retention strategies the reactivation strategies we use. And the other one, which I really like, so this is very different than the, let's say, 1990s, early 2000s, recall everyone, phone the client, chase the client, that sort of stuff. Ken never did that also in Tasmania, so that I never really learned that strategy, but a lot of people I've worked with since then have. But we also do a biannual community event. So that's another hallmark of a high retention office, is your ability to build a community around you. So we do that in the form of a biannual juice cleanse. What's really cool about this is the biggest vortex element that we use. When somebody puts their hand up and says, I'm going to do this, Vismai, and not eat for 3 days, they're really stepping into saying, hey, I really like your message. I'm going to go with you here. At the end of the juice cleanse, I ask every participant, would you like to do this again? And they all say yes. Maybe 1 out of 100 says no, And then I say, okay, well, 6 weeks before the next event, we'll just mail you and let you know that it's on. Is that okay? So that's Seth Godin's work, permission marketing. It's really important to have permission from our community to share our message with them. So 6 weeks before every juice cleanse, I mail everybody that's done it. And we always get reactivations from that too. So there's 3 big R's we need to look for with a high retention office. It's reactivations, referrals, and retention. They're the 3 R's. And these 23 vortex elements, they allowed me to build a practice where I saw 1 new client for every 2,500 return visits. And I did that for 5 years in a row. Sure, it took me 8 years, 9 years to kind of crack that code. But once it was cracked, it was very stable, actually, in its data, the results of the data, which is compelling, actually.
Now, if I wanted to say the skeptical side, I mean, it says that makes, I can see that being possible over in Holland. There's not a lot of chiropractors there. The message is very different with perhaps the understanding too. Are there other chiropractors doing the same thing in the US, the UK, in Australia, seeing similar numbers? Because my retention was good, but it wasn't that good. Like, we had a PVA that was well over 150, but I mean, yours is at 3 every 2,000, that, you're looking at 700, 800. It's extraordinary. there as well.
Well, there's a couple of, I mean, short answer is yes. It seems really like when you hear that stat, you think, oh, that's really magical. It's really alchemical. Maybe Vismai's got something, but it's not that. I'm not particularly good looking. I'm not particularly charismatic. I'm not the best communicator in the universe. But I set up an extremely disciplined environment. So the formula for alchemy is this, is you make fixed assets volatile and you make volatile assets fixed. What do I mean like that? So, for example, a chiropractor who puts a quote on the wall and they paint it, that's a very fixed asset. It's missing an opportunity to change and shake up the practice a bit. There's only so many adjustments that a client can get inspired by the same quote or the same patient management path to wellness kind of charts or chiropractic education posters. So we change the artwork in our office every 6 months. We do a newsletter every quarter. We we have the community events, and that brings the volatility into a potentially very fixed place like a chiropractic office. On the results side, we've had chiropractors come from Australia into our office who had PVAs under 20, and within 18 months in our office, they were having PVAs of above 1,800. And that's consistent. So that's not me. These are people coming in, starting a practice. They might have been our fourth associate starting from zero, and they've built these high retention things very, very rapidly. And of course, I've been coaching this material now since 2017. So there's chiropractors in the US, there's chiropractors here in Australia. They're all moving the dial quite significantly on their PVA. Maybe not up to 2,000 yet, but it takes years, Angus. Like, I don't want to sugarcoat this material. It's not like you read my book and your PVA moves. Like, there's a very big difference between a busy office and a high retention office, And to change the retention dial, unfortunately, it's a slower metric. It's a metric that's just, it's slow to change. There's nothing, you can't speed that up in the sense that, let's say, for example, if you're doing a community event like a juice cleanse, you need to do at least 4 of them before a bit of traction starts in the community, And so that's already 2 years have gone by. But these days, nobody wants to wait for that. Everybody wants the quick growth, the quick Facebook ads, the quick. Probably my favorite book I've ever read on marketing is Seth Godin's book called This Is Marketing. This is probably as close to, I feel like I could have written that book, it's just as close to the mark as I want to build a tribe around me and collect people around me who share my values. Yeah.
That's interesting.
People can do this. It's not magic, mate.
Yes. Let me stick with the community event in terms of that too. In terms of that re-stimulating or stimulating reactivations, is that just a matter of, you're sending out the email, I'm like, yes, we're back in again. And by the way, we need an adjustment. Is it that type of just, again, it's another reminder that you're there in front of them that stimulates the adjustment?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example with when we mail out the community newsletter. We do that every quarter, which is very nice frequency. We get very few unsubscribers at that frequency. I don't know, it seems to be a real sweet spot. If you do it every week, it's just too much content for me to create. And it's also, people unsubscribe from that because it gets a lot over the time. But a quarterly newsletter is fine. But when I mail it, Angus, I don't really anticipate that they'll click on the link and open it up or something. It's just, I just like to go past their inbox, and sure, there's my QR codes there where they can easily scan and, book an appointment. But it's just like that. It's super low key, and I have zero attachment to the outcome of it. I do want people to stay in chiropractic care for life. Of course I do. For both them and me. I love building a community. I love people that just say yes to chiropractic. Their life is just so much better than the ones that don't get lifetime chiropractic care. So it's like that. Once again, there's no trickery to it. It's just, here's my newsletter. What I do advise against doing is only emailing your inactive clients when you want them to come in for an appointment.
Totally.
If you've been nurturing people for 2 years with a quarterly newsletter and all of a sudden you have a free open day or something you want to talk about, that's fine. You've kind of got a bit more permission then.
Yes.
But a lot of chiropractors just don't, they don't sweep up all the inactive clients. A lot of those people dropped out of care, like you said, just because life got busy. I'm always surprised actually who comes back into care or who drops out. I think, oh gosh, my rapport with him was going well. The results were great. He hasn't come back. What's happening? Sure enough, at a certain point, they're back, or some people that drop out of care, I might think to myself, yeah, I kind of anticipated that. It was a bit weird or a bit clunky or whatever. But sure enough, they're back in care, so I try not to anticipate or judge or, I just provide this kind of sweeping rhythm, and then it's up to the client to see if they'd like to come back to care or not.
I would imagine a big part of your success is choosing the right people. I was interested in kind of doing some research for this, that there are 4 questions that you often ask that help to uncover somebody's values and make sure you're aligning values. Can you tell me a little bit about the journey to those 4 questions, perhaps share those 4 questions? And how do we go about making sure that we're filling our practices with people who have aligned values?
Now, you're touching on something really significant here, Angus, because we take this super, super seriously, because I love to work with people who I love.
Yes.
And I love to work with people who love me. And I love to work with people who can afford chiropractic care.
Yes.
So there's a sweet spot, I call it. I love you, you love me, you've got money. That's my sweet spot of the ideal client. I love you means that I see in you the values of vitalism. A person might not say that, but they'll say things that let me know that they think their body's clever. The second thing is naturalism, that their body's a part of nature and they see their body as a natural thing. The third thing is holism, that they view their body holistically as opposed to reductionistically in parts. And the last one is humanism. So a sense of a friendly relationship with their own body and the world around them, as opposed to more authoritarian, praising me up when things work well and then knocking me down or blaming me for things when it's not going so well. They're the 4 things, but we take it so seriously. We actually have in the back part of our office, so this is not publicly displayed, but we actually literally cut out a profile picture of these clients, and we've got a list there of a big wall, and it's called our Chiropractic Hall of Fame and Loyalty clients. Every quarter, as a team, the associates and our CAs, we discuss if somebody can go on that wall. We don't just put them on because they've bought a package. It's a real value thing. We really go through those values with each and every client, each and every new client, whether they're active or inactive, if they can go on that Hall of Fame. Why we do that is because it has a compounding effect. Like if you start building your practice with people who really love you and you love them because of values, then they've got friends and family that you love too. It's just how it works, right? So that's why, don't get me wrong, it's not, I've just started a new office 2 years ago with loads of interruptions in Singapore due to COVID. But the first year I saw 293 new patients, and I only had 65 people on that Hall of Fame list by the end of it. But year 2, it just gets more and more. Each quarter that goes by, more momentum builds, because those people on that initial 65, they were going to be the ones that are responsible for building my practice. They were going to be the loyal ones that were going to show up each time because we did share values. And that's just part of the puzzle, right? So you share the values, but then you've got to link that value with the adjustment. You've got to sort of introduce people to the idea that they buy an adjustment from you for the same reason that they buy Lululemon or Patagonia, a surf brand, or that they follow a certain movie actor, or they like a certain artist, musician. The reason why they follow those people for life often is because they share values, whether it's through lyrics, whether it's through material selection, environmental issues, whatever it is, And so when I spot a value in a person, as I'm adjusting them, literally as I'm adjusting, I'm saying the same reason, that's one of the friendliest things, or that's one of the most natural things you can do for your body, or that adjustments just really increase the natural cleverness of your body, So it has to be linked. It's not just identified, but it needs to be linked with what the chiropractic adjustment.
So clever. If I'm starting a practice from scratch, in fact, you've done that over in Singapore, where do I begin to find these people, and how do I market in a way? I'm like, okay, if I've got a practice full of people, it seems to me I can kind of work on these systems and the rhythm, the vortex, to increase my retention. But when there's nobody coming in, how does this process begin?
So it begins with there's a really specific order. I suggest starting with your branding, even before you open your doors. If you're thinking about starting a new office in 6 months from now, take away the repetitive decision fatigue of thinking, do you like this design? Do you like that design? Make a brand deck And then from that brand deck, get your welcome booklet and your newsletter done. You need to turn every new person that comes in that door. I always have a competition with myself. I like to generate 3 referrals within 20 days. And I don't ask for the referrals directly, actually. So that's another part of that rule. So that's what you've got to do. You've got to get these assets in your hands that people take home from your office so that they can occupy space.
What are the ingredients of a great welcome book?
Well, it can't violate anything that you stand for. So the ingredients of a welcome booklet, it has to have the message that you want to bring across with chiropractic really clear.
Yes.
But here's the thing that we use it as. It's almost like a tool, Angus. So I like having habit trackers in it. This might sound a bit funny for chiropractors who are very, very straight, because you're verging away from just the adjustment in that sense. But bear with me. If a person comes back to that tool every day and ticks a little box, they're engaging with your work. So we have habit trackers for those first 4 vortex elements that I just mentioned to you.
Yes.
I just get them to simply tick it at the end of the day. If you go to the fridge, just tick the box. If you feel like you stood on both legs today, if you drank enough water, if you did your walk, and if you're sitting without your legs crossed, just put a tick or a cross. And by the end of those 4 weeks, we hope that you've got a lot more ticks than you do crosses. Very simple. The people that engage with that, as silly as this may sound, and as simplistic as this may sound, the people that do that are putting their hands up to engage with me. And they're the ones that any form of engagement with these vortex elements, I know that will lead to retention.
Are there, you mentioned there that you're not actually asking for a referral in that first 20 days there too. Are there elements of things that you are doing to at least open the path for that or make it more likely?
Sorry, I don't quite understand the question.
Well, when we talk about that, one of the games that you play with yourself is I'm wanting to turn each patient into 3 referrals within that first 20 days there too. Are there specific things along with, the habit trackers and stuff like that? Are there other things that are particularly that you do that really help to encourage referrals?
Yes, there is. So, and this comes back to the front desk. We've got a very nice technique. It's called stretching the moment. So let's say, Angus, someone comes in and they've been coming in for 3 or 4 weeks and they might say, can chiropractic help with?
Yes.
A CA needs to know how to pounce on that opportunity really, really well. So I feel like a lot of opportunities are missed in a chiropractic office because the team's not so trained. And so we just simply say, oh, how long's your husband had that low back pain, Mrs. Smith? Oh, 2 years. Okay, and how did it start? Did it start with an accident or did it start with stress from work? Oh, listen, Vismai wrote an article about this 2 years ago in a newsletter about back pain. I'll get it for you. So what you've done, you've stretched the moment, you've sought to understand one of Stephen Covey habits, and then you've had the courage to be understood. Listen, that's his issue. Okay, we understand that. This is our take on it. Take it home, give it to your husband to read. If it makes sense, next time you're in, we'll make an appointment. So we don't immediately say, yes, chiropractic can help with. I just have a little bit of restraint with that because even though I'm at the start of the practice, I still have a slight filter there.
Yes.
So then if a person reads it and his wife has said, they've asked me about it. When did it start? How long has he had it? The likelihood of her going home and asking and following through on that with her partner is way, way higher than if we just say, yes, a chiropractic can help. We need to stretch that moment a little bit, just because, not that the person doesn't want to go home and tell their husband, it's more like attention. They just forget life's busy,
Yeah. You're about to head back up to Singapore and hopefully have an uninterrupted run back at practice again. What are you excited about in practice at the moment?
Really building a community around me again. So we had a 5-year break from chiropractic, traveled the world, homeschooled the kids. And I just really like building the community around me again and having meaning in people's lives and going on a journey with people. That excites me the most. I also really like now, of course, I have my new book out, Keep Your Clients, and I love sharing that with chiropractors. I've had a very graceful life as a chiropractor. Chiropractic's given me and my family so much, Angus, and I really enjoy sharing that now and helping other chiropractors get on that same journey.
I in preparing for this, I came across a quote where somebody compared you to the Tim Ferriss of chiropractic. Every decision he makes is well thought out for maximum efficiency. I thought that was a lovely quote for somebody to share there too. What are you tweaking and playing with, and what are you looking forward to sort of investigating? Because I can't imagine you just kind of sitting on your laurels now. You seem to be constantly looking for further ways to expand this. What are you looking forward to testing?
I think just sharing this work with other chiropractors and, just bringing back this idea of really patient-centric care, a bit old-fashioned actually, Angus. It's getting back to really caring for people. I feel like a lot of chiropractic, we don't study business at school, so a lot of us are behind the 8 ball with that. So we've got this pure calling, but all of a sudden you realize you've got your rent to pay, staff to pay, issues to solve, legal things, insurances, all this sort of stuff. That all has to be taken care of. So I just really like to help chiropractors take care of business while taking care of people. But the people part comes first. The successful, high profit, sort of predictable business happens as a byproduct. But you can't manage your way to it. You have to really design your way to it. And I think that excites me, is just to share with chiropractors to step back from the day-to-day runnings of the office and think, okay, how can I design a great 6 month for a person coming into my office?
Yeah, I think, Vismai, you're a fascinating mix of this very heart-centered side it's quite common in chiropractic, certainly in chiropractors of your and my age, that we got in there to some extent to save the world. And sometimes that sort of chiropractor, as you mentioned before, doesn't have great business sense there as well. But you also have a tremendous amount of that. I remember you talking about this pushing the practice to begin with in the early phases, that I've got to cover my overheads, I need to cover my director's wage, and then I have a 15% sort of on top of that for my retirement. And the fact that you were able to articulate that so quickly and so clearly as well tells me that there's also a real understanding of business fundamentals in behind it though as well. How did that all come together for you, and how have you been able to create such synergy between those two things that often chiropractors struggle with?
Well, I really love people, but I also just really love business. I'm an avid reader. I read a book every week on business, personal development. So I just really love that. And I also strongly believe that if you've got a very high profit chiropractic office, you can actually take better care of people and better care of yourself. So that's the flip side, is a low profit, high volume, low fee per visit kind of business model just doesn't work long term. Either the chiropractic gets burnt out, or it's a race to the bottom with the lowest possible fee. We've had an office, Angus, set up 200 meters from us in Singapore, and they're 8 times as cheap. We're 8 times as expensive as them for day 1 and day 2.
Yeah, wow.
And what's interesting, I haven't had one single person compare a price with them. So in the absence of value, price doesn't really matter. So I've always prided myself being the most expensive chiropractor in the city, in the country that I'm working in. And I do that just because it works. There's lots of things break in a business. I'm not talking just about a chiropractic business now, but just any business. Stuff happens, and it's all unanticipated and it's all unexpected. Whether you get ill, whether somebody sues you, whether you have a child that's not healthy, or you go through a relationship crisis, divorce. None of us are immune to all these things, right? It's just life. I mean, I'd love to say that we don't experience them, but we all do.
Yes.
So a high profit office also acts as an insurance in times like that, and that's a reality. So that's why I find a high profit chiropractic business is a really responsible thing to explore. Not just because it's all money stuff. It just helps when things break,
Yeah, to me, there's an ease to it. I've been the cheapest chiropractor in my town, and we played the volume game. And it's a good business model. I mean, it works for Amazon. It's made arguably one of the most wealthy men in the world there too. But it certainly comes with its challenges there also. So Vismai, thank you for sharing so openly today. Where can people find more about you? Where can they get the book? I'll make sure all these links are in the show notes for people to kind of follow up.
I think that's probably the easiest place to start, Angus, is just read my book. It's called Keep Your Clients, and you can get it at keepyourclients.com.
Yes.
Start there, read that, and if that makes sense, then we can explore other ways to help build a high retention office. Yeah.
Great. Beautiful, buddy. Thank you so much for today. Enjoy the rest of the time in Tasmania, and safe happy birthday for the coming week.
Yes.
And then safe travels back to Singapore later on this month.
Thanks so much for the opportunity to share with your audience, Angus. Hopefully that's been valuable for some people today.
Absolutely. Take care, man.
Okay. Thank you.
If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, you have to come and check out my Community Influencer program. It's my monthly coaching program where we take all this material and I'll work with you to help you apply it, implement it, and systemize it. The Community Influencer Group Coaching program is designed to help you increase your practice income, impact, and enjoyment. Join me over at anguspyke.com/join. That's anguspyke.com/join. I'd love to see you there.